In this module, we will learn the inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs of the Perform Qualitative Risk Analysis process. Perform Qualitative Risk Analysis is the process of prioritizing risks by subjectively evaluating their probability of occurrence and impacts to time, cost, scope, and quality. This should be done by collecting and analyzing data for each risk on the risk register. This can get tricky because there is often a reluctance to put resource time and effort into researching and investigating events that may never actually occur. Therefore, it is important to properly scale these efforts to the risk management needs of the project. The goal is to understand enough about the unknown to reasonably estimate the relative importance to managing and responding to the risk. This analysis can contain interviews, workshops, research into organizational process assets or lessons learned, or require additional subject matter expertise. One of the key inputs to the Perform Qualitative Risk Analysis process is the Risk Management Plan, which should describe how this process will be performed. Some of the relevant items include: it should describe the subjective levels to be used to describe risk. A simple project may use 3 simple categories: high, medium, and low. However, a more complex project may utilize a larger set of categories, such as critical, high, medium, medium-low, and low. Further, the risk management plan should define what each of these categories means. The risk management plan should also indicate the roles and responsibilities for performing this process. This can include members of the project team or organizational risk experts that are matrixed in, as well as external stakeholders. The risk management plan will also provide important definitions regarding project risk. For this process, the definitions of probability, impact, and urgency will be important. Since the tools and techniques will include probability and impact analysis and matrices, a description of how these tools and techniques will be used should be provided. For example, on what scale will impact be evaluated? A scale of 1 to 5 or a scale of 1 to 100? The assumption log is a document of high-level strategic assumptions about the projects found in the charter and will be used to track more tactical assumptions and constraints about the project throughout the project lifecycle. Last but not least, the risk register is the list of identified risks that will need to be analyzed within this process. 2 additional inputs include enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. Enterprise environmental factors may include government standards, stakeholder culture, and the organization's existing infrastructure and tools. Understanding the project environment will be especially important throughout the risk management processes. Organizational process assets may contribute probability and impact matrix templates and lessons learned. The PMBOK guide outlines 2 key tools and techniques for the qualitative risk analysis process: risk probability and impact assessment and probability and impact matrix. Probability assessment investigates the likelihood of occurrence for each risk event on the risk register, usually resulting in a numerical result like 60% or a range like 40 to 55%. Impact assessment focuses on understanding what effect the risk event will have to a project objective if the risk occurs. Since the team may not have conducted intense analysis at this point, the result can be very subjective, such as high, medium, or low. More risk categories can be used if a greater level of detail is required. After completing the assessment, a tool known as a probability and impact matrix can be used to help understand the relative importance to the project. The purpose of this matrix is to provide a visual representation of the combined effect of the 2 major influences to the assessment of a risk event: probability and impact. The parameters for the probability and impact matrix should be provided in the risk management plan or it could also be included in a template. Based on the complexity of the project, the matrix can include a simple or more elaborate set of impact categories, color banding, and may separate opportunities and threats or combine them into one matrix. The matrix essentially serves as a backdrop, and you can think of each risk on the risk register as a pushpin that belongs somewhere on the map. One by one, the team should evaluate the probability and impact of the project risk and place the risk in an appropriate position on the matrix. Since each risk may affect a different project objective, the project team may wish to determine a weighting system to help determine the relative impact of cost versus schedule versus other types of risk. As the risks fall into the various cross-sections or categories, their relative importance to the project can be better understood. There are a few additional tools and techniques defined by the PMBOK guide. Risk data quality assessment is a technique to evaluate the accuracy and usefulness of the information being used for analysis. If sources are unreliable or estimates lack precision, then more research may need to be conducted to complete the analysis. For example, if analysis finds that the probability is 20 to 80%, more analysis may be performed to come up with a better estimate. Risk categorization and hierarchical charts is a technique of sorting risks by risk area, project area, or another area to help identify particular portions of the project that are subject to risk. This can be documented using a risk breakdown structure as pictured. Risk urgency assessment is a technique to identify risks that will require rapid response to risk based on the timeliness of the occurrence of the risk. For example, a risk may be relatively low in probability and impact, but have a high urgency because its occurrence would likely be soon. In contrast, a risk could be high in probability and impact, but have low urgency because it would not happen for over a year. The sole output of the perform qualitative analysis process is project document updates. Most importantly are updates to the risk register to describe the ranking of risks using subjective qualitative scores. A qualitative ranking can be descriptive, such as low, medium, or high, or numerical, such as 1 through 10. After completing the identify risks process, the risk register may just be a simple list of risks, potential triggers, and risk owners. As a result of qualitative analysis, it can now be updated to include the relative priorities of each risk and help to rank the risks into groups such as high, medium, or low. More detailed categories may be used if required, and as documented by the risk management plan. In addition to establishing priorities, the risk register may also be updated with a description of new risk categories, which may also lead to updates to the risk breakdown structure, labeling of root causes, particularly those which may require consolidated response, or a description of the relative urgency, such as whether the risk is more likely to occur in the near term or the long term. Perform qualitative risk analysis is the process of prioritizing risks by subjectively evaluating probability of occurrence and impacts to time, cost, scope, and quality. The sole output is updates to the risk register. It is important to understand the difference between qualitative risk analysis and quantitative risk analysis. Qualitative analysis focuses on understanding the relative importance of one risk against another by creating a priority or severity ranking based on subjective understanding.